Hello everyone. In some parts of the country, remote Romanian communities still preserve the pre-Christian tradition of the bear dance and the goat dance. I am not going to dance it for you, but I have some sounds for you from this tradition. Usually it gets very loud, not this time though. The loud drumming and rattling sounds are meant to cast away bad spirits and to make sure there is room for the good spirits to enter. So I did the same for your community and for mine. And I wish we find in our lives all sorts of small rituals that will keep us grounded and help us bravely face our own shortcomings and blind spots. We need courage and gentle forgiveness. Life is short and precious, so it is worth breathing deeply, drinking our tea or coffee with gratitude, maybe do a tongue-length meditation, and hold our loved ones close to our hearts. Dear friends, dear youths from St. John's, greetings from rainy Transylvania, not snowy this time. For those who know me, my name is Béla or Bélu, and for those who don't know me yet, my name is still Béla or Bélu. I'm the minister in Járat-Gálfalva, and I record this sermon from the parish house, which is about 1 mile away from your partner church in St. László. I wish you all a happy new year. Hope many of you will be able to visit Transylvania once this pandemic slowly quiets down. I would like to start with a song. I will not sing it, but read you the translation. It is from our hymnal and it goes like this. Live, dare to live fully, child of the earth. Sacred gift of nature, you are the blessing. Eternal fire in a time-bound shell, live, dare to live fully before you return to the earth. Your spirit, your soul, is the out-breath of the sky, and you then have a sense of what heaven is. If your body is tired and without strength, remember, you have wings too. Have courage to use them. Live, dare to live fully, child of the earth. You can bring heaven into your life on earth. Do not ask, is there more to it? Is this the grand goal? Trust in goodness. Have hope. Love. Dear friends, in January we celebrate the issuing of the Edict of Torda, which in 1568, January the 13th, for the first time in the West ensured by law the freedom and conscience and the right of every congregation to choose their ministers freely. You are viewing this sermon in January, but I am recording it on December the 15th, and the date is not random. I choose this day because it was on the 15th of December 1977, in the first year in office of President Carter, when the joint resolution of American Indians' religious freedom was introduced to the Senate, and it was adopted the following year. Being far from perfect, and to this day there is a failure to enforce its provisions, at least it stated that it finally allows the practice, protection, and the inherent right of freedom to believe, express, and exercise traditional religious rites, spiritual and cultural practices like access to sacred sites, freedom to worship through traditional ceremonial rites, and the possession and use of objects traditionally considered sacred by the Native American communities. So today, all the good things that happened in the past, all the policies and laws that provide free religious expression is worth celebrating together. Even though my identity is Transylvanian and yours is different, although there are considerable differences between American UUs and Transylvanian Unitarians, because we live in different societies and in slightly different kind of cultures, we share the common passion for justice, human dignity, true fellowship, real peace, and love. You as progressive liberals, we as, well, trying to remain liberal despite some right-wing and so-called illiberal political pressure on our church. We need each other to honor our liberal roots and to stay strong together. We need your UU presence in our lives more than the financial support. To be frank, there's a thick shadow side in our Hungarian Unitarianism. Our history is abundant also in not so noble, tolerant and kind incidents, policies and guidelines. I could point out a grand illusion of so-called Unitarian exceptionalism and elitism, the moral high ground of the victim mentality, the total neglection of the Roma communities, etc., etc. But about these maybe another time. Because today we want to cherish and celebrate the sunny side, the best in our tradition, the openness, tolerance and warm-heartedness in our communities during the last centuries. I am sure you know much about our history, so there is nothing new, surprising about what I am saying. I would only like to shift our focus on a tragedy that sometimes is overlooked when we celebrate the Edict of Torda. It is the tragedy of a man and also the tragic failure of organized religion and the so-called fervent supporters of the faith, who did terrible things basically with good intention. Like the Inquisition, which rationalized murder, torture, by claiming that it is doing the will of the loving God. We see that today too. But let us stay a bit in the 16th century. The beginning of the 16th century for many Christians meant the imminent apocalypse, the second coming of Christ. How ironic was this self-fulfilling prophecy of doom and death. Because the 16th century was factually the apocalypse, but not for the Christians, but by the hand of the Christians for many indigenous cultures in America. This is how the century starts, and it ends with the rediscovery of the scientific method in the West, which was a good thing. And in the year 1600, with the burning of the great mystic Giordano Bruno. And almost right in the middle is another tragedy. The killing of a man without whom Unitarianism probably would not have appeared. Miguel Serveto, or Michael Servetus, was burned at stake in 1553 in Geneva. While many Catholics and Protestants celebrated the death of a heretic, the Italian and the scattered liberal Christians in Europe were shocked. How was this possible? How is this kind of hate possible even today, we might ask. The shock of the killing of Servetus made it clear to the liberal thinkers in Transylvania that elimination of rival faith groups is not the way forward. That is why, when in the name of God and Jesus, thousands and thousands were persecuted, killed, or humiliated, the Unitarians were those who emphasized religious tolerance and peace. That is why, for the first time in European history, religious diversity and pluralism was not just accepted, but promoted by a regime. And the Edict of Torda, January the 13th, 1568, was and still is the greatest achievement of Unitarians in Transylvania. And for that kind of passion for freedom, tolerance, reason and peace, Transylvanian Unitarians paid a heavy price. Refusing to strike against other religious and Christian denominations when Unitarianism was the main religion in Transylvania and the political and military power was in the hands of Unitarians, was in itself a testimony, an act of honoring and accepting different beliefs and religions. This courageous attitude, this peaceful act of tolerance, for many years was regarded by other regimes and denominations as a weakness of Unitarians, who were persecuted and forced to be more Christian than they were. The Edict of Torda was by no means perfect, and from the perspective of today's standards, it was restrictive and undemocratic. But in the 16th century, it was groundbreaking and nothing short of a miracle. The willingness of 16th century Unitarians to make even sacrifices for the freedom of conscience, for the liberation of the physically and ideologically oppressed, humbles us today. The dream of our first bishop, Francis David, was to restore true Christianity, as he would have said, meaning restoring the teachings of Jesus, living according to the good news that even in an inhuman society, even oppressed and humiliated, people still have the ability and the means to live in dignity as human beings. There is a lot of tension in our communities in Transylvania, in our lives. And there is a lot of tension in the US and even between UUs. In Transylvania, the future looks uncertain, and living in a double minority status as Hungarians in Romania and as Unitarians among other much larger Hungarian denominations has its temptations and difficulties. Tired of always needing to defend ourselves, we might slip slowly into the mainstream Protestant sea, losing some of our core values in the process. Maybe, hopefully, it will be enough what we have learned during long and dark centuries, that we need to be those few who even in very difficult times have to show more compassion, tolerance, kindness, and love towards everyone. Maybe this is more important than survival. In the 16th century, Francis David made a daring move and became the first martyr of Unitarianism and religious tolerance, because he listened to his heart and reason. and not to the tradition and dogmas of the mainstream Christians. For being liberal, there will be always a price to pay, sadly. But I am convinced that the humble, merciful, just and loving souls are everywhere of one religion. Although the label may vary, Hindu, Buddhist, animist, Muslim, agnostic, and so on. So let us celebrate our faith, the many beliefs, our feeling of commitment and responsibility for each other, for our societies, and for this world, for our liberal values that make a difference in our lives. Let us always remember and live according to our values and pray for wisdom and passion in our work, for making this world a better place. Send you love and blessings from Transylvania, and I wish that our lips and our hearts and minds will preach the same message, the message of tolerance and love. Let us turn our great achievements and our tragedies and also our anger into a call to action and walk this road together. You in the US, we in Transylvania. Let me finish by repeating the last two lines of the song I read you at the beginning. Do not ask if there is more to it. Is this the grand goal? Trust in goodness, have hope, love. Blessings, Isten áldja.